Today's discussion is about an article from the Washington Post entitled, "Along the New Silk Road, a Ghost City is a Monument to China's Problems." And the article was by Simon Denyer in the Washington Post on May 29th, 2016. So, what's happening is China is trying to redevelop the old Silk Road that Marco Polo established in the 1200s. So back then, you see from the picture that ships would start out of, land caravans would start out of Istanbul, which was then Constantinople, and would go through the Middle East, through China, and the city that we're going to be talking about is called Lanzhou, which is here. And then ultimately, silk would be carried back and forth, primarily back to Europe through Beijing, Shanghai, and Hong Kong. So China's current president, Xi Jinping, is trying to redevelop the Silk Road, which makes some sense. One of the issues that China's facing is that they're trying to redevelop, or you might say develop, Western China. Western China has been agricultural, mostly farmland, a lot poorer than the eastern seaports of China. I showed you on the last frame we had Shanghai, Beijing, and Hong Kong. So in recent times, the population in China has been hemorrhaging from the west over toward the east. So with this thought that the Silk Road could be redeveloped, the idea is we could, or in this case China could open up Western cities and create Western cities in places that they hadn't been. So, Lanzhou, which we saw a few frames ago, is in Gansu province, and it's on the Silk Road. So if you think about the old movie, The Field of Dreams, and I say remember here, I know a lot of you wouldn't remember from 1989, but in that year a movie came out starring Kevin Costner and James Earl Jones, and the basic idea was that if you built a baseball diamond, people would come to watch the game. And there was this moment in that movie where I believe it was Iowa. I know it was a Midwestern state. Somebody built a baseball diamond. All these baseball legends came out of the past to play. The public came, and pretty much, in a field in the middle of nowhere, a baseball stadium with lots of fans cropped up. So China is trying something like this in Lanzhou, and the question is, if you build it, in this case, if they build it, people will come. That's their premise. But the question is, will they? Now these pictures and let me pull the stuff from behind away. Show the current town of Lanzhou, and what you're supposed to see here is that they're really building a city in the middle of what's nearly desert. So the top picture, you see a lot of vacant buildings, brand new, gleaming, but vacant. And in the bottom picture, you see where they've really been redeveloping this arid, almost desert area and building lots of buildings. So in the middle of nowhere, a city's coming up. The question is, will it work? Well, foreign experts say the project epitomizes what's wrong with China's economic model. The government uses too much debt for projects, and the projects don't make economic sense. They have some sort of political purpose. The particulars in this case are that the Chinese government will spend about $10 billion in US dollars, and it's being invested to blast mountaintops, build infrastructure, roads, buildings, etc. And in the middle of Western China, there's going to be this big city designed for manufacturing, chemicals, and medicine. Note that it's being built by the government, not by the market, and that's one of the key issues that people raise with this project. The government says that 150,000 people live there now, and there's also approximately 40,000 temps in the area. Now, this kind of population, 190,000 right now, it's very small for China, but for the United States, this does border on being a mid-sized metropolitan area. But the problem is there appears to be far less people than the Chinese government says is there. The government, though, maintains that by 2030, some 14 years from now, there'll be 1 million residents. And they're designing for that. Chinese economists are critical about this, though. They think heavy industry. Remember what we talked about in the last slide, manufacturing. And I didn't write the words on there, but they're thinking about automobile manufacturing and heavy equipment, chemicals. These things are overbuilt globally. So the Chinese economists fear this will not create or satisfy new demand, but rather the industry will come out here at the expense of some other area. I was surprised myself when I researched number 14 and 15, so pay particular attention to them. In China right now, debt is 2.8 times GDP. Government debt is 2.8 times GDP. We've been very critical in the United States about the Obama administration and efforts to stimulate the economy since the recession of 2009. But even though the U.S. has a lot of debt, U.S. debt is about 1.04 times GDP. Notice then that Chinese debt as a percentage of GDP is more than double U.S. debt. Which brings you to the question of, is Lanzhou a mistake for China? Well, time will tell. Take care.